this is one of a weekly series that we have started. The target audience for this is national discipline leads. This week we are working on, we're going to be talking about an overview of the state process and conservation practice documents. The way that these workshops, these 1 hour time slots have been working is I'll make a presentation for a while, and then we'll open it up to general questions or discussion. This is very informal, and so anybody wants to stop me anytime, have any questions, feel free to do so. We are recording this because we know that everybody who won't necessarily be able to attend every one of these, and so we wanted to record them so that the folks that missed one can come back and check it out later on. So today is, well, let's just talk a little bit about the recordings. I have got 4 recordings now from week 2 to week 5. The links have been included in the calendar item. If you have trouble getting to any of these, let me know. I do plan on taking these and making video recordings of them. That is taking me a little bit of time to do. I will, once I get them recorded, I will post them to the tool and perhaps in other places too, so that folks can get them later on. All right, so hopefully everybody is seeing my Outlook folder right now. And I'm going to move in and begin talking about CPD DMS. Okay, so this week we're going to talk about the state discipline leads and the state process, or what they're going through. So I've logged into our pre-prod environment. This is our test environment. And the reason I've done that is because there's actually more stuff that's been done by states in the pre-prod environment than there is in the actual tool right now. Not much has been done on the tool. Plus, I felt okay about making myself a state discipline lead in the test environment, and felt that I couldn't screw anything up by doing that. So I've made myself a state discipline lead for Virginia and for Texas too, for that matter, in our test environment. So I wanted to give you just an idea of what capabilities states have, so that at the national level, as you're doing these, you'll have an understanding for why we're doing it and what states are going to have to go through to be able to use this, and what states' capabilities will be. So I want to let me go down here, and I'm going to work with Virginia. So here I am in state, and I'm going to come down and just go to Virginia. And you can see in Virginia, we've got they've got a few folders in here already. This is one of the ones that we've been playing with and testing with when we're giving some workshops at the state level. Plus, Elisa Ketchum, one of our main people involved with the team that was putting this together, she did some testing as well for Virginia, because that's the state that she comes from. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete some stuff, because I want to come back in and put it back in. So I'm going to delete some assets. Oh, it's not letting me delete that. Yeah, it is. There's a little bit of a delay, I guess, in the tool. And there's more of a delay for a state person than there was for me as a national person. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's just because the tool has more checks to do for me as a state. And what I'm just trying to do is, I know that this tool is in here. I was practicing with it earlier, and I meant to delete it before I started, but forgot. So. And when you have folders, they're called collections in here. You can't delete the folder until you've got it empty. So I had to go in and delete all the files in there, and then I could delete the folders. All right, so here I am in Virginia, and I want to add a new practice standard to Virginia's list. And the practice that I'm going to add is a brand new practice. It's 308 zip line. Now, as a state, you know, I can go in and I can look at all the national stuff. So I know that there is a new zip line standard 308, and it's an ag engineering standard. We know ag engineers have more fun, right? So zip line. And we have two folders in here. There's a 2018 folder, and if you go in here, you'll see that this is the standard. There's a bunch of files in here. By knowing the naming convention, I know that there's an NHCP CPS, that's the standard NHCP PO, that's the practice overview. The OM is the operation and maintenance document. There's also an SOW statement of work. So there's a number of, there's the standard, and then there's several conservation practice documents to go with that. These are in final form, and notice that the standard is in released form. And that's important because, you know, I want to adopt and use the current released standard. So that's the 2018 version. If I look at 2019, there's a draft in here. There's a pre-QAT draft, which just means that in the national process, they may have started with the next revision cycle. But me as a state, I may not have adopted it yet. So I don't want to adopt the draft of the new standard. I need to adopt the current national standard that has been released. So let's do that. Here I am. I'm back down in Virginia, and I don't think I even need to go down to Virginia to do this. But remember, there's this little caret down here that takes me in and gets me from my workplace to CPS management, and this is where the buttons are. Notice the states have got a different set of buttons. They've got a state adoption, create a new state interim, create an interim CPS from another state interim CPS. Notice too that when you look at the roles, this is, you know, it says state discipline lead for Texas, state technical lead for Virginia. I thought I had state discipline lead for Virginia, but I guess I made myself take state technical lead. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to state adoption of a conservation practice center. Just click on the button, pops up a little box. I have to know the zip line is code 308. Anticipated year. This is the year that I think that we'll publish it in the state. So I'm going to put 2019 here. Choose the state, and if I type V, you know, it gives me a chance to get Virginia. So it's, you know, I don't have to scroll all the way through the list. There's Virginia, and then I'm going to do state standard adoption. It was that simple. So I've now got the practice in Virginia. So let me go back and just see what we did here. We'll go to Virginia. If it doesn't show up, that's because I need to refresh. Remember, you can use this little symbol here, or you can use the little refresh button up here. But here's the refresh button. And then I'll go back down to Virginia. And now there's 308. And when I go in there, there's a 2019 version of 308 set to initial draft. It even took and added Virginia in the title for me. But as we'll see in a second, I'm still going to have some work that I have to do. So I'm going to click on it, and so it's already brought in. You can see over here, there's the initial draft. I'm going to right-click and check the document out. Now here's some of the things that are different. Notice in the right hand over here, we have this state revision. They've got rules. For each section of the document, it tells them what the rules are. So for definition, editing, not allowed. Paragraph additions, not allowed. Deletions, not allowed. So they, the rules for the different sections are there to remind the states. Purposes, it tells them that they can get an add as purpose, but it requires a variance. They can delete a purpose. No variance is required, and they can do that if the resource concern doesn't exist in their state. Notice, too, that there's two things over here, old state standard, new national standard. These, well, if they had an old standard in here and they're updating to a new standard, this window over here you could set both of these so that they would show you the same sections that you're looking at, and you could see what revisions you made last time to the standard. So that's something new. But since there's nothing in the system yet, that won't really help us until 5 years from now when we're going back and we've been in this system for a while and we're beginning to see those revisions come back around. Other than that, it's just the same as the national standards. All the process is the same. In order to edit sections, they have to do the same thing. Some difference is in when they go to save and close. They also need to change in here. So this is Virginia now. The naming convention changes a little bit for states versus national. So I'm going to save and close. One of the things, if you come down here, you'll look at the metadata. There is some different things in here for state versus national. One of them you'll notice is display name. That display name is actually used by FOTG. So if they wanted to put something in there, especially for really long standard names, you could shorten that and put that in there. What else do I need to say? I guess that's it. Notice that it did bring in the keywords from the national. They could change those if they wanted. Keywords are when you're in the FOTG, there is a search capability, and it's going to look for the name of the standard as well as the keywords. Okay, so I think I've said everything that I need to say. It's already knows that this is Virginia, and then I'm just going to hit save. Now, they have, at the state level, they've got two roles. they've got a state technical lead, and then they've got a state discipline lead. The idea being that the state discipline lead would be the state SRC or the state conservation engineer. The state technical lead would be their staff, typically their state level staff. Each state gets 10 total slots, licenses for the software. 2 of those being for the SRC and the state conservation engineer, and then 8 others. You can be, and then another role that they have at the state is the IRC, which is the review coordinators. And so somebody can have the role of review coordinator as well as either state technical lead or state discipline lead. That's just the other role. The difference between a state technical lead and a state discipline lead is the state discipline lead can finalize standards and submit them to the FOTG through that process. State technical leads can't do that. So the ultimate responsibility for that state level standard getting finalized lies with that state discipline lead. Now that is, like we said, we set it up so that that's typically the SRC or the state conservation engineer. They can delegate that to somebody else. So they could, for example, a state conservation engineer could have an assistant state conservation engineer, and he delegates that authority to that person. That's completely up to them. Ultimately, they'll have to have their own internal controls for that, but the software has the capability to do that. All right, so it brought in our example here, it brought in the standard. It didn't bring in all the other associated documents. So let's go do that. We want to bring in some of those other national documents that we created. So I'm going to just do a couple of examples. I'm going to come in here, new, create a revision of an existing document, and let's say I want to bring in the practice overview for this zip line. So I click that. I have to drill down to the national zip line standard, current year, and then choose zip line and click OK. And now it will bring it in to Virginia and sets it up for me to edit it. So just like the standard, you're going to have to come in and do a few changes. Change this to Virginia. Change it to 2019. For this particular one, for the overview, there's not really a lot here that I want to change, although I could. Notice that right now it's got the date of this national version. That'll change when I save it. So I'll come in here and do a save after I've got it like I want. It was doing this to me earlier. It's got the workflow is not correct. Some state level choices that I'm not getting. But
hey, Bill.
Yes.
This is Casey. This is almost prophetic, but notice that you're on the help collection. You're not on the state collection. Peter and I discovered this last week.
Yeah. I was trying to save it to the wrong place, aren't I?
Yep, and NDL or STL won't notice that because their permissions are a little different, obviously. So you should be good.
All right, so now I'll drill down to 2019. This workflow is now correct, listing default. So practice code 308, standard name, zip line, state, Virginia, display name, all right, that looks correct. I'm going to route it to no one. The route to button, just remember that, you know, whoever it's routed to, they're going to get an email whenever you route it to them, and it goes into their assignments. So I'm just going to route it to no one. You have two statuses, draft and final. Something has to be in final. Only documents that are in final, when you send them to the FOTG, only documents that are in final will go to the FOTG. So I'm going to hit save. And now look, you know, it says Virginia. When you look at the draft over here, it's already put Virginia. This month and year will get filled out at the point that I send them to the FOTG. So that those get finalized when I finalize them. But it was just that easy for me to create and bring in the document. Now I'll do one more. It's the same for all of these. Let's do O&M. I know what I did. I went to create one. I want to use an existing. So create from an existing O&M. Got to drill down to the national. Zip line. So not much in there. Save and close. And need to drill down to Virginia. Thank you, Casey. I will admit that this is I have not messed much with the state stuff at all. Okay, metadata, practice code, 308, zip line, state. Can't just put the V there. It wants me to go down. Oh, and lifespan in years. And I don't remember, I don't think it matters, but the lifespan does end up in the actual O&M statement. So I'm going to hit save. There's my O&M. And it does put the expected lifespan, top sentence in here is at least 10 years. States can also add in, for the O&M section, they could put in here a top section. And let's see if I can do that. I think that's in save and close. One of the metadata things, I think, is where I turn on the header. Add title block. So I'm going to add title block this time. Save. supposed to add a block up there with a title block that lets states enter in their things like their office, the producer, and several other of those types of things. That's pretty much how easy it is. One of the things that states can do is that they don't have to get a national version. They could go get a version from somebody else. So let's say we wanted to create a revision document and we want to get a statement of work. We could go and grab another state's statement of work. They don't have one. But you could drill down and go to another state, drill down and grab a statement of work from, say, Delaware, and then bring that in and use it in Virginia. Something else I wanted to show you was just the process for sending it to the FOTG. Now I'm not gonna walk through this. I'm just going to show you the buttons and tell you what would happen because I'm not sure that these are actually connected. Although, Casey, you guys have been doing this. Has this been working? Has this been connected?
Yep.
You guys been actually able to do that?
Yep. In the pre-production site, we were able to push a standard over to CPD DMS and do the associations, and then ultimately we pushed it to FOTG, so it worked.
Well, good. Let's try it. I don't know how far I'll get. I don't know if I did everything I needed to do. Let's say I want to release a CPS, state, Virginia, practice code 308. I don't know if I finalized. Yeah, unable to find one that is awaiting CPDS updates. All right, let's go back. Go to my zip line and move it. I'm just going to change the status from initial draft. Oh, I think I may not be able to do this as a team lead. Yep, it is going to let me do it. I think because I'm in the administrator group, so even though I have the role of a state discipline lead, I'm still in the administrator group, so I think it's going to still let me do it. And let's go ahead and finalize a couple of these others to send them at the same time. Because these won't go unless they've been moved to final. I've got a waiting CPDS updates, final, and final. Now, let's go to CPS management, update CPDS, state, Virginia, practice code 308, send data. There it went. So, successfully updated the CPDS with data from the standard zip line. This is the point where states will go into the CPDES, and if they needed to make changes to the resource concerns, to purposes, they could do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to the next step. I'm just going to assume that we're going to use all the defaults that are in there nationally. Don't need to do that. So go in here, step 2, add effective date. So state, Virginia, practice code 308, revision year 2/2019, effective date tomorrow. So at midnight tonight, it would switch over and the state would begin using this new standard. No release state standard was found. I think I got to switch my status again. So back to the workspace. Check this out. It was in awaiting CPDS updates. I need to change it to the next status. Released. All right, let's try it again. Step 2, State, Virginia, practice code 308, 2019, effective date tomorrow. Update the effective date. So, updated successfully with the date of Halloween. Found 2 supporting documents, the O&M and the practice overview, and successfully updated those and pushed them over. Click OK. So that added the effective date. Next step is update the state index. And that creates basically an index file of what standards are released in that state. If states use that file, they can put it in the FOTG. It's basically an index of their standards. Transfer to FileNet. This step takes the document files that we've created and any associated conservation practice documents, creates links for them in FileNet. So it's basically a series of macros that we're going through. Transferring. FileNet is kind of like SharePoint. It's just a different system. I think it's IBM's system, and it's what we use as part of our document management system. So all 3 documents successfully transferred: the standard, the O&M document, and the practice overview. So, reminder, for each conservation practice document, assign a standard exit, and step 2, manually assign the end date for the previous version before proceeding to step 6. I don't have to do that because I don't have, this was the first time we're using the standard. But if we had had the standard and it was in CPDES, I would need to go in and manually end date that that standard to effectively end on today, the 30th. And then the last one is step 6, transfer the metadata to the NRT. State, Virginia, practice 308, transfer the metadata. So metadata for the state standard successfully to the NRT, no old state standard found to end date, and it did move our 2 other documents. So at this point, you'd be able to see everything in the FOTG tomorrow because everything has a start date of October 31st. One more button here, permanently into practice. So if you had a practice the state wanted to remove from their list, they could use this button to do so. It does give them, you know, some flags that say, are you sure you really want to do this? And lets them know that this does permanently remove something from the system. Doesn't mean they can't come back and add it back into the system tomorrow, but it does mean that it completely takes it out of the system and they will have to start all over again if they want to put it back in the system. So at this point, I've kind of walked through all the steps that a state has to do. It gives you should have given you a feel. The state's number of steps are more complicated because they actually have to get it into CPDES and they have to do some tweaks there, which you as discipline leads, the discipline leads don't do. Those steps are done by the administrator and our national level practices and documents. We have a national web page, but we don't. Our stuff doesn't go into the FOTG directly. So that kind of brings me to the end of what I wanted to show. So at this point, I will open it up to questions, and we'll take questions about the state process first, and then we'll open it up for any questions about the tool, either from any aspect. All right. Anybody have any questions about anything to do with conservation practice documents? A few of us on. Doesn't sound like there's any questions. Debbie, do you have anything that you've been running across that you want to share with the group?
No, we had a short training session a couple of days ago with someone sharing our screen on the photographs like we talked about last week, inserting the photograph as an image, and then you can put in the description and just little things like that. If I'm seeing a repeat from one person, I usually am trying to reach out to them. I've been working on a lot of statements of work, and those are just some minor things that are coming, very minor, and trying to get consistency, and that's as much me as it is, correcting some of the punctuation and things like that. And other than that, it's been looking pretty good. I've gotten a few that the headings are awesome, so thank you, y'all, for getting those headings, because it sure makes it go a lot faster. One thing I am having terrible trouble with is the spacing when you delete. I'm sure y'all have noticed or not, but if if it's already gone through the final, and you, I don't know. I mean, if you should end up making changes, bottom line, do the preview. Let it go back in as a PDF and do a preview, scaled up in size, so you can make sure the spacing is correct. Fork is just not easy in that spacing working the way it is. So just ask that you do that. I, of course, check it real close when I get it as well, because sometimes when I delete things, it messes the spacing up. So it does require a second look, unfortunately. And don't hesitate to holler if you have any questions as you're working on something. At least that. Now, the state stuff I know nothing about, so I just kind of listen in on this.
It's very similar to national. They just have a different, they have a different, their end process is very different than the national. And if you do have spacing issues or problems with bulleted list or headings, we do have a video that Dustin, our contractor, did for us. He covers spacing issues, bulleted lists, and headings with me, and we've recorded it. I would say, watch, review that.
Absolutely.
Debbie's right. It's not uncommon for there to be an extra space in the document, the final document, that you don't see in the piece that you're editing.
Yeah, and that's between paragraphs and also between words and even letters. It doesn't work like we're accustomed to with Microsoft Word. Let's just say that, where creatures of habit, and that's why it is requiring a close look to make sure. So
it's very common for, the one that I see a lot is between this criteria and this general criteria, applicable to all purposes, for it to have extra spacings in here that you have to go in and take out. And sometimes to do that, it's easier to open up this criteria document rather than the standard, and you in here, whereas if you're looking at the this document and you bring it up in the editor, you don't see it in the editor, but you would see it in the PDF. And I don't know why that is, which is why Debbie's right. You need to look at the PDF before you finalize and look for, those kinds of spacing issues.
yeah.
Another thing that I notice is some folks are forgetting to take these and make them headings. They will put them in the sentence and make them bold, but that's the way that's the old way we did it. Now, we actually, if you have something like this and you don't put it in front of the sentence, you create a section that's a heading level. It ends up being
a level 3.
Mm-hmm. And then if you have like a list underneath that, you can go to heading level 4, and I have seen that in some standards. But just remember to do that. I'm going to talk a little bit about. Let's just talk a little bit about. We have some standards that are going through the process that are getting ready to be finalized nationally. I'm just going to go down here and pick some that are done. So let's look at 606. That's the water management engineering one. There's several things that you need to do in order to get these standards that are going through the process ready to be finalized so that we can go to the NHCP notice. You got to have the standard, and so that's that's the part we've been working on. The standard needs to be moved to this point where it's awaiting CPD DMS updates. We're going to, next week, Carrie Goodrich is going to talk about this process with us, and so I'll save that till next week. But this is the point where we want to get our standards 2. Basically, you finalized the standard and you've gone in and you've done the necessary connections with the conservation practice data entry system, and at that point it's ready to go. You also have the other files that you need to have ready, like this has a PS, that's a practice specification, an O&M document, a practice review, and an SOW. Notice that these are in the final status, which means that they have been, they're ready to go, they're finalized. That just means that you know, the team lead created the draft, passed it off to it's gone through QAT, and then the National Discipline Lead has finalized it. So to be ready, you've got all of these conservation practice documents are all in the final category, and the standard is in awaiting CPDS updates. The network effects diagram, this one is in ECS complete. This needs to get to the next step, which is basically a hold step, which is saying that this document is ready to go. All you've got to do is change the date on it and finalize it. The software will automatically date these other documents for us that are in the system, but the network effects diagram, because they're in Word, we'll have to manually change the date on those. That's it. Any questions?
Bill, this is Debbie again. Can I ask something? You know, when we get the notification, when I get the notification in the email, it identifies who was the last person that modified. When I put it QAT complete and route it, I'm putting it back to that person. And is that seems to be working well. Is that correct? Is that what I should be doing? Because, you know, right now I know we're going to the discipline lead, but you've also got a lot of acting. So is there any problem, or does anybody see any problem with me sending it back to whoever is identified in the email as the last one that modified?
That works, and then that person can, you know, if they're not the discipline lead, they can make whatever changes need to be made and then forward it onto the National Discipline Lead at that point.
Okay.
And provide them whatever feedback in the comment section that they need to provide to them.
Okay. All right.
You know, they can use the system to forward it to them and send a system email, or you know, some groups are just, you know, instant messaging or emailing each other back and forth, you know, pushing these different documents through the process.
Okay.
And I would say that, you know, if you have questions about the process, I understand this is a new process. Feel free to call me, instant message me, and you know, we'll get together on Skype, and I'll help you, you know, get through whatever trouble spot or get to the next point. I certainly recognize that that's going to need to happen until everybody, you know, gets up to speed on how to use the tool.
So, Bill, this is probably a question you've answered already, but I probably missed it. When I route something to the next person, do they get an email that says, hey, you have something waiting, or is it on people that know they have things coming plate to be able to go into the tool and check to see where things are at?
Good question. So when you go in and I'm going to open up one of mine. . 'Cause, 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 'cause Here's a new one. So when you open up, and let's say I'm going to open up one of these draft documents. So when you open up a draft document and you do some editing with it, and let's say you want to send it back to, say, Lee Davis, and you want him to look at something in particular, you can go to Save and Close, and you can leave the status as draft, and then you can route it to, and in this case, Sally Breadaway is my team lead for this particular practice. I can route it to Sally. I can give her a note. And then when I hit save, at that point in time, some things happen. One of the things is you now see that it was routed to Sally Breadaway. That's where it's going, last modified by Bill Reck. Sally, now, several things are going to happen. One, Sally's going to get an email that says, basically, this particular document needs your attention. My little note is in that email, and there's a link in there for her to click on it and take it to where she can go right into this. Her assignments up here will also have that added to the list. So she'll have, up here, she'll have assignment. I've got one right now that it's QAT complete, which means that Debbie finished editing. No, actually, this was edited by this is a network effects diagram, so probably Don finished editing it and sent it in as QAT complete. Oh, this for QA for network effects, it goes to ECS.
And then it comes to me after Don finishes it, after ECS finishes it, it comes to me. And like that one, I just made a note that I cleaned up a couple of the arrows. You know, there was no content change, but it does go through QAT.
So you get so Sally would get an assignment here, and when she opened it up and routes it on to the next person or changes it to route to no one, then it goes out of her assignments list. So you have the two options. If you route it to no one, that means no email is sent and no assignment is made, and it's just there waiting for whoever to come back and open it back up. If you route it to someone, and it can either go to a group or it can go to an individual, that person gets an assignment. Now, the only people that you can send it to are the people that are tied to that particular standard. So in this particular case, Milk House Waste, if I want to see who's tied to it, I come in here, go to Edit Collection, and go to Groups. I'm going to go User Profiles. You see that these are the only people that are in here that I can send it to. I can send it to the administrator, or I can send it to Sally. Now, some groups have gone in and, like the water management engineers, they have gone in and tied several folks to some of theirs. Like I'm going to pull one up now. Here's 428. If I go in and look at theirs, you know, they've got several folks that they've put into theirs. So when it comes up and they want to route it to somebody, you know, they don't have one choice. They've got, you know, 4 choices. You'll also have the name of the National Discipline Lead is also a part of that list. So the National Discipline Lead for this whatever practice would also be a part of that. That make sense?
It does, thanks. Can you route it to more than one person if you're in the review kind of time frame, or is this, you pick one off the list and that's who gets it?
So there's a couple different ways that you can handle a review. One is when it goes to internal review, that sends it out to all internal review coordinators.
Okay.
Internal, if you say you wanted to have a team of people looking at this, there is a way that you can set up an internal review team. All those people have to have licenses through this system to be able to access, but you could create an internal review group and do that and send messages to that internal group. We started going down that route, and the capability is there, but I don't know that anybody is going to do it that way. We could put together a recording that shows you how to do that, how to create a group and how to add people to that group and assign that group to a practice. What we found is that most people are like, if we want to do this, the way that we're going to do it probably is we're going to call a Skype meeting, invite a bunch of people to Skype, and then share screen, and we'll all talk about it that way. That seems to be the normal way that people wanted to do this process, at least when we were, as a group, going through and testing and beta testing this. That's where we landed.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, hearing no questions, I'm going to bring this week to a close. Next week, we have the CPDS, Setting Your Resource Concerns, Carrie Goodrich. Carrie's going to walk us through that process, which is new to us as well. Basically, this new conservation practice documents or conservation practice something entry system, whereas discipline leads going to be going in and setting those purpose to resource concerns inside of a new tool, and every purpose will be attached to a resource concern. So instead of doing this CPPE in the future, we'll be doing it through this tool. And also, these relationships are being set up and done this way because at some point in time in the future, we'll be doing our ranking using these relationships that are set up through this online system. Anyway, that's next week. So I'm going to bring the recording to an end. Thanks, everyone, for